Hi guys, and welcome to Complete Incast Episode 3. My name is Spencer Brossman, and I'm here once again with George Benn from George's Video Games and Repairs. Check out Episode 2 where I asked him a bunch of questions, but this time, George has some questions to ask to me. George, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. What's on your mind?
So, my number one question is, and I ask a lot of people this every time I see them buy and purchase video games is, why do you need and see the point of collecting a massive game collection?
And that's actually a really good question that I will not deflect, I guess, because it's a podcast. We're sitting in my basement right now, which is fairly full of games, although, to be honest, it could be more full of games. I mean...
Well, you do own a game store.
We could have more stuff down here. No, I'm messing with that. So, what made me, or I guess just in general, what do I think about just, collecting games? Why do I do it?
Yeah, why do you do it?
There are a lot of different reasons why people do that. I'll go into that later. The reason I like doing it is it's a nice hobby to have, I guess, as the basis. Just something that I can kind of, every week get a game or two and just kind of add it to it and just kind of see the collection grow. I will say that I only really focus on a couple systems, as you know: Sega Saturn, Sega CD, Sega 32X, and maybe at this point TurboGrafx 16, where I try to collect them all or most of them. When it comes to collecting games, I generally either take a game home or find a game for one of two reasons. One is it's a game that I think I'd really like, or two, it's a game that I think is either historically important or historically cool, if that makes sense. It's just a very neat game that I would be like, oh, how silly, they made a game about diabetes for Super Nintendo, which they did, by the way. So it's that kind of thing. You see it and you're like, I can't not own the game about diabetes for Super Nintendo. You know what I mean? So just in general, I don't know exactly when it started. Maybe you're curious, as to, how it started and everything. I had a Nintendo and Super Nintendo growing up. I wasn't, obsessed with games or anything. I mean, how they always have the stereotypes of people play games, never go outside, that kind of thing. I played sports all the time. I did, 2 sports in high school and played even more when I was younger, and I loved being outside and stuff, but when I was, inside and just hanging out with Trevor, who's now the manager at Complete Unbox, it was just fun to play games, and we just did.
Now, if it wasn't for your video game store, which that's my next question, you own a video game store, and the reason is, why did you want to own a game store? And the question is did that actually help you collect more games? Because if you didn't have your game store, would you actually not purchase most of these games?
Absolutely. To the second question, if it's easier for me to have more games, there's no question at all about it. One of the first questions people ask me is, you have all this stuff in here, you must take it home all the time, kind of thing. I really don't. Every week I might find one or two, whatever, interesting games that come in that I'll just put it to the side and I'll be like, that's interesting. And a lot of times, really, it's not even the good stuff, quote unquote. It's not the really expensive stuff. It might just be some weird PS2 game that I'm like, I've never seen this before. What is this? You know what I mean? And I just want to check it out. So there's absolutely no question that having the store helped grow the collection quite a bit. I would say before I started the store 5 years ago, I probably had maybe a third or a fourth of what I have now, maybe even less. It was still okay, but it was nothing amazing. And it's just over a course of time, I'll find something, or I'll buy a large collection from someone and take half a percentage of it, and just go, oh, that game, I really need that kind of thing. As for why I started the store, unfortunately, there's no amazing, great answer that's oh, I rose from the ashes. I was out of college and I was working at a couple, different game stores, and I really liked how they did it and how they went about it, but it was just a little maybe not fulfilling or whatever, and I felt like I could do it not even better, just differently, because I would never consider us better than the way other places do it. We just like to do it differently, and we like to have our own unique thing to it. And it was just like I said, I was right out of college, and I was like, what do I, everyone gets to that point, they're like, what do I do? Literally, what do I do? Do I continue what I'm doing now? Do I do something different? And I was like, I'll take a chance. I talked to a couple friends who had some really good ideas and helped me, set stuff up, and I just sat down one day and started writing down, can I do this? And I got to the point where I was like, yeah, maybe, maybe I could, and as it kept going on, I was like, yeah, I can do this. So that's really it. Like I said, it wasn't some crazy thing where I was like, all other game places are bad, bad and I'm good. You know, it was just like, I just want to kind of put my own spin on it, have fun, you know, have like fun tournaments, have like the arcade area, learn more about games and all that kind of stuff. And that's actually, although it wasn't the original reason, so you, as someone who has to deal with a lot of video game like history and stuff, you over the course of time working on video game systems have like appreciated history of games more. Like you look at the Super Nintendo and it's almost 30 years old, you know, and you go like, wow, how did they make this 30 years ago and it's still lasting, right?
Yeah, I mean, some of the older games actually still look pretty good.
Yeah, and at this point nowadays, I would consider myself more of a video game almost historian than anything else. Like, part of collecting it is, like, I learn that information, I can add it to the thing. Yeah, I mean, of course, the internet's out there, and you can have all this information, you can look up any game, but then it's like, you know, it's nice, not only for the store, if someone's like, what is this game? I can be like, oh, it's a really silly game that I've played, but it's like, you get to know why this stuff happened. Why did the Sega Saturn fail? Why did the Sega CD fail? Why was the Super Nintendo, you know, so powerful at certain things and not at other things? And part of the collecting is like you get to like kind of learn those different things. Which is, again, it's not why it started. I just kind of started because I was like, I want to have a bunch of games and it's cool, you know. And now it's gotten to the point where it's either like that game's cool, I want to learn about its history, or in the case of a couple of the systems, Sega CD, Sega Saturn, and 32X specifically, they are obtainable, and there's not like 1,000 games. There's like 200. I can get them over time. It can be a nice little checklist that, you know, say I have a busy, you know how, when you have a really busy week at work, or a busy day, what do you do as like a celebration to yourself? You like get a pizza, crack open some beers.
Mostly go home, relax, but yeah, I crack open a beer once in a while to
Yeah.
celebrate, depending on what it is. But yeah, I do collect games too. It's just I don't see the point of being like a massive game collection. Which I agree, you don't have a massive game collection.
I'm super lame as a person. I like football, which I can't play all the time, and I stink at. I love my family. They're fun, but sometimes they're sleeping or at work, or soon Ferris will be at school. And it's just like a nice little like checklist kind of thing. Like I had a busy week and we did really good at the store and we rocked it and all this stuff came out. Not even that I want to play the game. It's like I'll add this game to my collection. You know, make it a little more, you know, like almost, I don't want to say fulfilling and makes it some existential crisis where it's like it completes me. But it's like you walk down and you're like, you know, right. I'm sitting right here near the box Super Nintendo and it's like, oh man, that's really grown over the last couple years. It's really cool, you know. I finally got, after the longest time, Harvest Moon for the Super Nintendo boxed, which I wanted for like the longest time, because that was a game that I played
as a kid.
Okay. Now you had a question about other people.
Yeah. Now, if you're a game collector that's doing a game collection, now here's my question to you guys: is the games that you collect now, are they from your childhood, or are you collecting them just because of the fact that they were this really popular game, they cost so much money, and you just have to have it as part of your collection?
So there are 4 main reasons why I think people collect. And I'm going to go into them in order of most likely to least likely for that. Although I've seen them for personal friends and also for, you know, just collectors that I've just met. The first one would be just lost childhood. Like, you're older now, just like, dude, like, being a kid was cool. And there's nothing wrong with being an adult. But you got a lot more crap. We just went over a bunch of tax paperwork. And how lame was that? It was super lame.
Fun.
Right, it was super lame. So, like, when you're older, and, like, say when I'm playing with Ferris when he's, like, 16, and hopefully we're, you know, messing around before one of his football games or whatever, I'm not going to be thinking about what the time we worked on tax work, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, you know, maybe I might think about, like, when I was younger and we were hanging out with Trevor and we were playing games, or all the, sleepovers we used to have when, I was lucky that it was, right around the Nintendo 64, we both were, when we were like younger, so the 64 and GameCube were out, so we had all these parties with like 4, 6, 8 people just all playing Smash Brothers at the same time, and it's like that lost childhood memories. Like all my friends that I played there all the good old guys from like Garden Spot High School and stuff, they're like all around, but we're all so busy. You know what I mean? Like they work so long, you know, like, you know, they have families, I have a family, and it kind of like reminds you pick up Smash Brothers and you're like, I remember that time that, you know, this is a very specific one. I remember that time that I had a birthday party, and it sounds so silly saying it in 2016. We would have a Super Smash Brothers match to decide who got to pick the next episode of Family Guy on the DVD.
Did you win it all?
I mean, I was terrible, so I would never get to pick it. But it's so silly to say it, but like, you know, they would pick it and be like, I want to watch this one from season 1, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's the number one I really think is that bringing back a childhood, whether it's lost or not. Like, I had a great childhood, and I know a lot of people did too, but sometimes it's nice to look back.
Yeah, I agree. Me and my buddy, every Monday we get together and we actually play Nintendo games.
Yep.
We started playing that.
A lot of people are doing that nowadays. Number 2, this one is a little similar to the first one, but it's that a lot of these people could never afford these back in the day. So a lot of us only had a couple games for each system because they were $60 at a pop, and there wasn't like all these game stores that had all these old cheap games. Everything was relatively new back then. So you didn't have 50 PS4 games that you can pick at any time. Right? It was like, you know, you get 1 for Christmas or 2 for Christmas, and that's it. And if it was a stinky game, you got a stinky game for Christmas, and that was what it was. So, you know, a lot of times people pick us up and they're like, I rented this at Blockbuster because my parents could never afford it, and I only ever remember renting it 1 or 2 times because every other time it was rented out, right? Yeah. So and then they come back in and it's only $20 nowadays, and they go, I'm gonna do that, you know, kind of thing. So,
I miss Blockbuster because of that.
I absolutely do. The third one would be just kind of like I do for certain things, like just being a completionist. Like, there are people out there that are like, I want to get every PS2 game. And there are people who collect everything, whether it's from old, I mean, you've seen either Pawn Stars or American Pickers probably, you know, people collect old Coke signs and, you know, porcelain dolls, like everything. And it's just one of those things where the nice thing about video games is if you want to go out and collect an entire system, you usually can. Even a system like PS2 that had 1,500, 2,000 games, that's all that ever came out, right? Whereas if you're like, I want to collect every record, you know, every like vinyl record, impossible. There are records made, you know, for Lancaster County only that you would never find. So with that, you'd have to say, I want to collect every Green Day record. I want to collect every Beatles record, right? But with games, you can say, I want every Sega Saturn game. And it's going to cost you, and it's going to take time, but you can do it. So that's the reason I do it for someone. You know, down the line I can say, I have every Sega Saturn game. That's pretty cool. You know, it took me 10 years to do, and I bit and pieced it, you know, but I did that. Now, the last reason for people collecting, and I really, really disagree with this one, and it's especially seen now with like newer games coming out, is using it almost as a form of savings or as a form of like almost playing the stock market like an investment.
I was gonna say.
Right. Now, at this point, you know, when we're recording this, and it's been like this the last couple of years, video games have been getting slowly higher in price. And that's because they're the older ones, they're never being made again. And they're there, and what's there is there, and they're still very popular because a lot of these games are very good. Or for the reasons I explained before, people are going to it. But what if we ever get to this point where, like, not that it crashes to be nothing, I don't think that'll ever happen, but what if people are buying this stuff super, super high, and then it goes a little bit low? A lot of people will, like, when a new game comes out, and this is mostly you can do it with new games, they'll buy, like, 3 special editions of whatever, right? In hopes that, like
the Fallout Pip-Boy.
Yeah, or like The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask new 3DS from last year. People were like buying them left and right, so they could be like, I'm going to sell one right now, and I'm going to save one for 20 years or whatever, and it'll be worth so much money. And it's one of those things, it might be true, but if that's the only reason you're collecting for that, and this is a topic for a whole nother thing, but I don't necessarily agree with it. It can be nice that maybe down in the future, you know, I can be like, Ash and I want to move to a far-off island, whatever, I'm going to sell all my games, you know, and oh my gosh, they're worth a ton, cool, great, you know, but it's not like, don't base your life on the fact that, like, you're like, getting these games that'll be worth something, because whenever that happens, it's, like, just bad news for that. And again, that is a topic I will discuss later, probably with a collector friend of mine, but that is a legitimate reason why a lot of the newer stuff is hard to find, because people will just be like, oh, I'll take 10 of that special edition because they'll be worth so much, you know, kind of thing, and they take them all off the market like that. So, yeah, just in general, those would be the different reasons. Like I said, I'm not going to cast any stones, because sometimes I'll see a game and I'll be like, This game I haven't seen very often. Maybe it'll go up in price in the future, but I'll also enjoy it as long as there's a little bit of love there. And like, George, I hope the one thing, and I know we're just audio, but I hope the one thing, it's not great right now. I usually keep it a little clearer than this, but I hope the one thing that I convey with the stuff down here is like a love for it, and like it's like all alphabetized, it's all there. Like I'm very like particular and like it and all that kind of stuff, and it's not just like in a box that's like, this is my retirement investment, you know what I mean? Like, as long as, I don't care what reason somebody collects, as long as there's a love for it. Yeah. You know, for whatever reason, you know, any of the ones I went before. So, we're pretty much running out of time. I guess I rambled on a little bit. Do you have any other questions for me real quick? Or?
If you were starting game collection, I know games are, you know, like you were saying, you'll get into the price thing with your other friend as a game collector. But if you were just starting out, do you recommend just collecting? I believe in this, which is I'm doing, is just collect what you grew up playing and enjoy those.
Absolutely. If you try nowadays, it's so crazy. If you try nowadays to do something like collect every game, it's not going to happen. It's just they're too expensive unless you are like very well off. It's just too crazy. And the good news is, folks, a lot of the games out there that are very expensive for the older systems, like a lot of Nintendo and Super Nintendo games, the very expensive ones are usually very bad. So it's just that they're rare because they're expensive because they're rare. And they're rare. A lot of these games are rare because they were terrible and nobody bought them back in the day. But now they're like $100 because people want every single game and they can't find it. So seriously, keep to the stuff you like. Yeah, there's going to be some stuff. You want Super Metroid for Super Nintendo. It's going to cost you $50-$60. But will it be worth it because it's a great game? Heck yes. And of course, there's always different, you know, ways to play them. You can get like collections and you can download them off the Wii U shop and all that kind of stuff. But absolutely, George, I would say if you're just starting nowadays, at least start with the stuff you like or liked or very much want to try out. Don't go all crazy like me and just be like, I just want every TurboGrafx game. It's not a great place to start out unless you get very lucky with it.
He actually collected them before he owned a working TurboGrafx.
I did. I had many before I got it, but then I finally got a TurboGrafx and a Turbo Duo, the handheld one, so we're okay. So anyway, thank you guys once again for listening. And that was George Benn asking me a question that I rambled on and on about. Thanks again, George.
Oh, yeah. I can't.